Now I'm waiting for my really loud speaker to come on and blast that off here. It's a little flaw in the Facebook design, but it's all good. I only got half a cup.
Well, you know, half is better than none.
I guess so. I guess so. Let's see. Okay. There we are. Look at us. Look at us. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning. And let's just move that right down there. Okay. Oh, we've got the group joining us this morning. Come on in. Come on into the room here, kids. Everybody better have their coffee. I have a feeling this is going to be a coffee kind of Monday. So,
yes.
Okay. So it's 10 o'clock straight up. Shall we go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
And let's see. You just posted something that I can't possibly get to right now.
That's okay. That's okay. That's the something we're going to talk about today. So
we're going to talk.
Ready to go.
For all of you people, you're just going to have to wait. But anyhow, welcome everybody to Monday morning coffee and compliance. Good morning. Cheers. And first, we were kind of like, well, what are we going to talk about? And then it turns out we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. So one of the things, you want to talk about the PED widget first?
Sure, we can talk about that first. So as I mentioned last week, CAR had announced that Glide would have a fix for some of our logistical issues that we're all experiencing with the PED V forms. And so that widget went live on last Thursday, the 23rd. And there is a webinar tomorrow to explain how to work it. I admit I have not had an opportunity to take a look at it. Lisa did briefly, so she can mention it real quick, but I just posted in our group, but Lisa still has to approve it.
So I can't.
A couple of bullet points on what it does and the link to the webinar that is tomorrow. So it'll be pretty exciting because it will help us facilitate the PED V forms on both sides, whether we represent the buyer or the seller. So we're looking forward to digging into that this week. I encourage you all to try to watch that video. If you miss it, they always post their webinars after the fact. Usually by 24 hours later, you'll find it on the website. And once I see it posted there, I can go ahead and post that link as well, so everyone can access it. But hopefully that'll help solve some of our issues with facilitating the logistics of the PED form.
It's a very tricky thing, because just when you think you've got it figured out, and guess what? We're approved, it's live now, but you're here, so don't leave because it'll be waiting for you. And let's see, there's another one to approve. Okay, Mr. Logan's a busy guy, more good articles for us. But I think, if you want to go check it out, I did it like, a half an hour ago. And it really isn't that hard from what I can tell. Now, have I been able to try out every single thing with this widget? I didn't really know that was what a widget was, but they came up with a pretty smooth, streamlined method of rounding up all of your PEDs to be able to generate a PED in the Glide widget. You're not going into zip forms, you're actually doing it through Glide. You can import documents, you can have it linked to a zip form room, and it seems pretty user-friendly. But I will say it's a little reminiscent of like when you get a new iPad or a new, Mac Air, whatever the heck we're calling these things, where, Apple kind of thinks, you got this, so you're cool, so you know what's going on, and then, you're looking at it going, direction, a little bit of direction, please. So what I would say for anybody who doesn't want to wait for the webinar, get on there and play with it. I made a test case. I have, some test users signing documents, and, if I have more time, I could probably figure out all of it from the listing side, which is going to be the next thing. But why waste my time trying to figure it out when I can register for the webinar tomorrow and have them show me? But if you just want to play, by all means. Hardest thing for me really was just trying to remember what my Glide sign-in was, because I don't remember signing into Glide more than once in my life. But definitely,
well, I'll admit I didn't test it because I don't know where to sign into Glide. So I'm going to learn that tomorrow on the webinar. So as much as Lori is the resource person, I don't know this one. But I brought this to you all, so remember that.
You can tell that Lori's theory and Lisa's practical application. That's how this works over here between us.
I'll begin using it. Don't think I won't.
You're gonna get on there just fine. Actually, you get on when the big sign-on screen comes on with the gazillion different things that CRMLS offers. You got the little Glide thing. Click it, boom, that takes you to it. But then now you got to remember, well, what's my password?
So wait, I have to go to my MLS login page to log into Glide?
I think that's the easiest.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, cool. I would never have guessed that, but it makes sense.
We all work together and we all figure this stuff out, because Lord knows I'm not going to use the word unprecedented times. Well, that's 2 words, but guess what? It is. We've never, we need to all cut everybody a little slack, because this has really just been one of the weirdest times, I think, in anybody's life, unless you're around during the 1918 pandemic. And I probably would think you're not selling real estate if you were. So moving on, let's see. Well, one of the things we were chatting about was we got a pretty hot market out there. Yes, and Daniel says it's in the additional products of your CRMLS panel.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Makes sense. Thank you for confirming that.
I believe you.
Oh, and Brandy also did too. So we know who's watching out for us. And Daniel, I got that booty machine, and that's shoe booty machine. I want everybody to know. I haven't tried it yet, but Daniel, you have inspired me. So maybe I'll do a video just like you did when I play with it for the first time. So anyhow, speaking of listings, which is why you would need one of those, market's pretty hot still, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, definitely. All of my broker clients are in other counties as well are reporting the same. It's just everything is on fire. The minute they put something active, they've got, a dozen or more showings and getting, 5 to 12 offers in the first couple of days.
And that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot to deal with if you are the listing agent, and it's a lot to deal with if you are representing the buyer. And I had a couple of situations in the past few weeks where I was on both sides, and I'm getting ready to put another listing on the market by the end of this week, I believe. And, it's like, what can we do? What can we do to be better prepared as a listing agent to properly take care and do our fiduciary duties to all parties of being fair and honest? And what can we do as a buyer's agent to be sure that we're writing the best offer we possibly can? So we're going to talk about the RPA.
Yay!
Hey.
It's interesting because we've been in the business long enough. We've been through multiple cycles, and we've had the up, we've had the down. This one I think was rather unusual because we were ramping up, and then we halted with COVID-19. And during the month of March, we all sort of resigned ourselves to, well, just a couple weeks and we'll be back. So April, when we were still on stay-at-home orders, we couldn't really kind of think straight. We had to kind of figure out, wait, how do we function? And so many conversations I had back then when people would call me and say, hey, I have this issue, what do I do? Because of COVID. And I said, take the COVID out of it. How would you have solved this before? And that's what we seem to forget is we have to go back to those fundamentals. And yet we get kind of blindsided by COVID-19, and now it's a really hot market and we don't know what to do. And we have to kind of take a breath, slow down, and just remember how real estate works. And one of the most important things, one of the most time-consuming things that I've spent in the last week, I mean, when you say, how's your week? It's like, it's been a week. It has been a week that feels like a month. And I've had so many different phone calls from people saying, I have this situation. What do I do? And one of the first things we look at is, what does the contract say? And I have not read so many paragraphs in 1 week from the RPA over and over and over again, because you can read it, you can think you know it, first of all. You can read it and say, oh, okay, yeah, I guess it is worded that way. Yeah, that makes sense. That is how I'm doing it. And then you start analyzing word for word. And you start realizing, wait a second, this could mean something else. So I've had a lot of those kind of conversations where we've really analyzed the RPA. I'll give another shout out to CAR because those Q&As are incredible.
I think that that's one thing that a lot of us out there do not know that's available to us is the depth and breadth of the Q&As that are offered, the FAQs that are offered out there by CAR. There were things that I saw just this week because we've been busy little researchers, and things that I saw, I'm like, oh, whoa, they have this question and then there's that answer, but I didn't think I was ever going to find that question in there because that was a question I needed answered.
Yeah, so, very specific examples that are real world relevant.
Mm-hmm. Very.
And then they have their quick sheets. I think it's called quick sheet, quick guide. That is more of a one-page summary that extracts the best information out of those Q&As, the most relevant information. And I even had one broker give me a call this week that honestly, she stumped me. And we were examining this form and her gut instinct was telling her, I don't think my buyer should sign this. And Sierra Legal told her, nothing to worry about. And she didn't feel right about that. So she called me figuring I would confirm what CAR said. And I said, I'm not sure about that one. And I had to do a lot of digging. And honestly, where we found the answer that supported her gut feeling, which was contradictory to what she was told by an attorney, was in the form's advisor. So it's another resource within the CAR website that helps you. If they don't have all of the forms in there, they have a lot of them. They have probably, I don't know, there's 5 pages. If there's 10 on a page, there's at least 50 different ones. And there's these little blue dots and you click the dot and it opens up to a little text box and you can click a radio icon and listen to it, but you read the text box and our answer was in that text box. And she was able to send it over to the other side and say, here's why we're not signing it. And the other side backed off and said, oh, yeah, I didn't really understand the form either. I was just told to use it. So we have to remember that, you know, we all don't know everything. And it's been a huge help for people in my life to just kind of talk things through because we each look at things from a different point of view. And from our different experiences, sometimes something, you know, you dust off the cobwebs and say, I remember one time when this happened.
Well, and I think what you said about the person talking to CAR Legal and still not having it sit right. And I think that we need to respect that more as something that we don't really, you know, a lot of people will say, well, but that's what the attorney said. Well, you know, if every attorney agreed, then we wouldn't be having, you know, trials in courthouses now, would we? You know, you're going to get a different answer from a different attorney. You know, most of the times they should all pretty much jive, especially in this because we're talking, you know, real estate and contract law. But sometimes you get the answer, you know, that's not, you know, maybe you didn't convey the information right to them. Maybe they misunderstood what you were saying. Maybe, you know, the way they're looking at it, they don't know all of the facts, so they can't possibly answer. And, you know, it's something that I've noted for years, you know, and it's just something that, you know, if you don't feel right, you know, go, number one, if you're a salesperson, license holder, go to your manager, go to your broker, you know, talk to CAR. Maybe you have another resource for advice. But you know what, follow your gut. And if you're, you know, and this gal knew, I'm assuming it was a gal, I could be wrong. You know, she just knew that it didn't feel right. And sometimes you just have to respect that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
you know,
there's so much good information out there that I, you know.
Yeah.
for as long as I've been doing this, I had no idea that they were that in depth on the FAQs. And I think that that's a great resource for all of us.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And I used to work with an attorney many years ago, and a lot of agents. And on numerous occasions, I'd have an agent say, well, I don't really care for that attorney. And I would ask why. And they said, because every time I call, he gives me a different answer. I said, well, you have to understand that you're calling with different situations each time. And there's no scenario, there's no transaction that is exactly like the last one. There's just not. And I said, it also depends which side of the transaction you're on, because the attorney that's representing you is going to focus on the defense for you, not the defense for the other side. And so depending which side of the transaction you're on too can also change the response. Now, when it comes down to the law, of course not, but how you proceed will depend on which side you're representing.
We both need more coffee because I can't talk today. Sorry, everybody, I can't talk today.
We'll figure it out.
Well, let's talk about some of these, what can you do as a buyer's agent to be sure you're writing the cleanest offer that you can, within reason, protecting your client. So you don't make silly mistakes or ones that are going to come up and bite you down the road. What's something that you see a lot?
Well, I think where you start is you call the other agent. Call the other agent and number one, let them know your buyer is really interested in writing an offer. And you start that line of communication and you simply ask them, what is your seller looking for? Now, they know how much they can say and how much they can't, but you'd be surprised. A lot of them will tell you a lot, and you just need to ask. You just, because at a minimum, you're calling, you don't want to get countered for services. So if they didn't put it in the MLS, then that's one of the questions you're calling them on. So yes, right now you need to write the cleanest offer you possibly can. And I think that starts with communication. I mean, I'll use that as the default answer for everything today, I bet. Communication and setting expectations. And the more that you know what to expect when you're writing that offer, the easier that offer will be. And that includes, well, when are these offers going to be presented? I need to set the expectation with my buyer, because the minute I email it to you, they want an answer. And we know we're not going to get an answer then. And I know we're going to talk about that. We can talk about that in a few minutes, the presenting of offers. But I think it just starts with the open communication with the listing agent. What do you need to see?
Exactly. Well, and it was interesting when I had a listing that I received multiple offers on a couple of weeks ago. I thought I was the only guilty party on this, and my assistant Brandy's in the thread, so I'm sure there's going to be a really good comeback from her, because she has to kind of help me with some of my stuff. And one of the things, though, that I saw, because I thought I was the only person who did this, I received 7 offers, and of the 7 offers, 4 of them did not complete the confirmation of agency on page 1. And it's just checking 2 boxes, because if you check 1 box, it'll auto-populate the other box. And I have forgotten that numerous times. I didn't realize everybody else is forgetting it too. So it's one of those things that if you want to make that listing agent happy so they don't have to send out an agency confirmation form or write a big deal in the counter offers stating who works for who, double check item 2B that you checked 2 boxes, because the other 2 will fill themselves in. And I think that that's something that gets missed a lot. And what you want to do is you want to have that clean offer. One less thing for that agent to have to figure out what they're going to counter you on.
Yeah, that's an important one. I mean, there's a civil code that requires that. So this isn't just your file checker being nitpicky. And I'm happy that Brandy catches them before I file check them. So thank you, Brandy.
I'm happy I just looked at it on those offers coming in, but
you fix them right away.
It's just one of those things that, it's an easy thing to miss. There's a few things that are easy to miss. So, and from a practical aspect, practical application aspect, those are the kind of things that I'm just going to point out real quick, because those are things that we can just, double check ourselves, catch ourselves when we're writing these offers and say, I'm writing a clean offer. Well, how clean is it? Did you forget something, or is something not clear? And I think another thing is when you're saying that verifications attached for down payments and lender letters, be sure that if it is, check the box. And if it isn't, don't check the box. And that's a real basic, easy, simple thing. Again, something that you're just not thinking of. And yes, Brandy said, Lisa actually caught these ones before I saw the offers. Oh, pat on the back, because I know what I do wrong. So I look for other people to do. And probably
attachments are really important, because it's easy to say, well, yes, I have it, so I'm attaching it. But then if you forget to send it and it's implied, it's stated that it should be there. So it's not I plan to send it to you later kind of thing. And when we miss these little things, they might seem insignificant and we can work them out. But if you have a legal issue later, rest assured the other side is going to nitpick and point out every flaw that you made along the way. And what are they doing? They're attempting to show this pattern of sloppiness, this pattern of you not doing things right. And so it's critical that when you check the boxes, make sure that you've checked the right boxes and anything that's supposed to be attached is attached. When we talk about the TDS, how many people see attached AVID and then they don't attach it? It happens a lot. Well, that TDS is incomplete. If you said that there's another document depending on, information is dependent, but it's found on another document, that document needs to be provided. So it becomes even more critical on things like that, like the TDS.
Exactly. And another thing to be, I'm just going through my handy dandy contract that I just happen to have here. Actually, I have a pile of them over here. Some of the things too that you may want to just remember is on your home warranty. If you want AC coverage, you better write it on here. Check that box. You don't want it, don't check that box. Just be sure that you've got that figured out. Be sure that that home warranty cost is going to cover what it is that you need. Because if it doesn't, your client is going to be the one making up the difference. If you want that seller to cover that cost, you should know what the cost is and be ready to have that cover all of whatever upgrades or additional coverage you want.
Yeah, and that's an important point. I want to add to that because you could easily say $900. I'm just going to buff it. Like I'm going to buffer it and have a ton of money there and then mark nothing. Well, escrow is not required to offer and order all of the things that you might want. Their obligation is to order what has been marked. And I think it just defaults to like some sort of standard contract. It's all of those add-ons that they technically are not supposed to order. Now they might do it out of courtesy, but they don't have to. They have to order what the contract says.
And actually a lot of escrows aren't even going to order them for you. They're going to make you do it. And you know what? You're better off if you do it because then you are the person who's checking the boxes, making sure what's done, unless you have a trusty assistant like mine, Brandy, because she does it for me. Because she knows to watch out for her boss. But one of the other things that can get really sticky, and especially in a market like this, yes, Janet says, put in the comment for home warranty buyer to select options. Very good. I like that too. Janet's a sharp cookie out there, folks. I'll tell you that. The items included and excluded. I think that that's something right now that people need to be watching more than ever because number one, if it's in the MLS, reiterate it. In fact, I think the last offer I wrote, it was, I called out all of the things and then said, as stated in the MLS as of the date of this offer. So then if they change it or backpedal or something like that, number one, I've got my printout showing this is what you guys said was going to be there. And two, I'm confirming it in that offer. Now, also you can ask for other things. One thing that I don't think a lot of people remember to check though, the box of all stoves. And I get a lot of comments like, why would we check that? They're going to leave the stove, right? And back in the day, during the recession and we have all of the foreclosures. People, before that, people didn't take their ranges. No, they didn't take their ranges. And then once we got into the short sale days, they're like, hey, I got a really good, Thermador range over here, or my top of the line Frigidaire, or whatever the heck it is. I do not get my range. I'm going to take my range. Well, you're selling the house. Person moves out. Like, oh my God, where'd the stove go? And this is kind of like a little remnant of the recession because people started taking their ranges. So just to be safe, even though, if it's a freestanding one, check that box. If we're talking cooktop and wall oven, you don't really need to because they're taking a fixture out at that point. But a freestanding range is a freestanding range. So you just want to check that just to be safe. And sometimes sellers don't realize that they can't take it with them. I found that out recently. I'm like, oh, no. Your new house is going to have a range. So, it's just one of those things, kind of a little silly checkbox, but it's a checkbox nevertheless. So I would always recommend checking that.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to setting expectations. We all know that things should be in writing, and there is an expectation that you mentioned it on the MLS, so it should stay there. But people's emotions change throughout the transaction, their attitudes change throughout the transaction, and you never know what is going to be important to either party. And so if you want it, you need to ask for it. Even if it clearly says in the MLS, it comes with it, and it says it in the flyer, and it says it everywhere. In order to make it contractually binding, make sure it's in the contract. Set that expectation, save the headache.
Yeah, because if there isn't a range in that house because you didn't check the box, guess who's buying somebody a range? You may not want your housewarming gift to be quite that expensive. So, and also the same thing is items excluded, because that needs to be called out, because items excluded can get a little hairy sometimes because it may not be in the MLS, but the seller might consider it personal property and the buyer might consider it a fixture. So you want to just have that called out nice and straight. But I think the one that causes the most trouble that I've seen at the last minute is the one about the brackets attached to walls, floors, or ceilings for such components, furniture, blah, 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 shall remain or shall be removed. And a lot of times you're not walking through the house counting how many wall-mounted televisions there are. And then you forget that's there. And I now, because personal experience talking, just because we didn't check the box saying to be removed and holes or other damage shall be repaired, that expectation can change as well. It's kind of like back in the day with the wall-mounted sound system speakers. And, you would ask the seller and they're, oh, I'm cool with that. But then in the middle of the transaction, and this was mainly a guy thing, I always found this very interesting. It's like, they're not getting my speakers. And it's like, you can go buy another set of speakers. No, I want those speakers. And so you realize that, number one, we didn't tell them that they weren't getting them. And number two, now you got to take them down. You got to patch it all up with their approval. And it's those little things, just the little goofy things. So if you can think as the buyer's agent stepping in, what can I exclude so we don't have any issues? Or if we really want it, be sure it's something that person's going to want, and be sure when those counter offers are all done, those expectations are there, black and white, not like, well, maybe, or be sure to remind your client when they're packing up.
Good advice.
What else we got in here?
I don't know. What other problems do you run into when you're getting your offers?
As a listing agent, one thing that I've started to do, which actually I was reminded of this while I was taking my real estate practice course towards getting my broker's license, because I'm currently not a broker. I've been a salesperson for 27 years, but it's that time. And there's a certain redhead on this video here that's been So we're getting our broker's license along with a few other people along with a few other people in the thread here of this Facebook video. And in practice, one of the things they had was be sure you have all of these documents before you put the house on the market. And I was always one of those, oh, we'll open escrow, we'll get this, we'll get that, it'll all show up, blah, 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 blah. Why worry about it? And so while I'm taking the course, it's like, get a preliminary title report. And, many years ago, I was told by some title officer, I don't remember who, no, we can't give you a prelim until you actually open a transaction. Well, and I kind of stuck with that for years because a lot of times we'll just hang with something that we heard years ago, whether it's right or wrong. That's the way that we set up our business. We keep doing it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start getting the prelim up front. And I'm going to read the prelim so I know what's there. So I can look and see if we have an issue with how the seller holds title. I've got all the deeds in front of me. So I can look and see, okay, we've got all the parties here. And believe me, just because somebody tells you that they can sell a house, especially when it's a trust, you better have it figured out up front. So that was one thing. The second thing was I'm a proponent of having my termite inspection up front. And I know we have options. We have different options now, the way that the RPA is written, that we can either include it specifically in our contract that we want the buyer or the seller to get a termite inspection, or we can negotiate it in the request for repairs. And it just depends where you are, because I know, like, I have a son who does business up in Los Angeles. They tend to include it more in the request for repairs. I have found out I would rather have my seller prepared to know what's going to happen, because if they have to have their house tented and have $3,000 worth of woodwork done, don't you think they'd rather know up front than find out midstream during the transaction and say, whoa, I ain't doing that, or have the buyer say, I'm not buying that house because I didn't know that there was all these problems. So that's
a big one. I do a couple deals a year, and I have run into that a couple times, because when I got in the business, we had our separate wood pest addendum for all you newbies out there. Like, a few years ago it changed, and now we don't have the separate addendum. But when we switched from eliminating that separate addendum, there really was no specific guidance on how to do this. There were options presented of, you put in the contract. Really, it should be in a request for repairs, because it's more of a request, more of a repair request item. Yet I agree with you. I mean, I wrote an offer 2 years ago, and I didn't put it in the purchase contract. And boy, I almost had to pay for termite work, because that listing agent was firm with me. She said, you didn't ask for it. And I said, but that's not how we do it now. I don't have to ask for it now. I get to ask for it later. And she wasn't having it. We worked it out because we talked it through. We were able to solve the problem. And I was sweating bullets then. So now I put it in my offers all the time, because I want to make sure that the seller knows upfront, we will be asking for this. And I just personally think that's the better way to do it. And on our listings, we do our termite reports before we go live, so we know, the seller knows what to expect. So when that buyer does ask for it, either in the beginning or later, we already know what it's going to look like and can account for that. So, we do have some things in our practice that there is no specific guideline on who does what or who initiates which form. We know it needs to get done. It can be done from either side, but there is no specific. So it's always kind of tricky when people call and ask, well, who's supposed to initiate this? Well, there's no specific rule. It needs to be done, and either you can do it or they can do it, but it needs to be done. So those are the difficult parts of our business, where we just have to kind of go with our gut, contact the other agent and find out, okay, so where are you expecting, me to put the termite? Because we did have one offer that one of our other agents wrote last year, where that listing agent called her and just yelled at her and said, I told you not to put the termite in the offer. He said, you can't tell us what not to put in the offer. So it was a big deal. we ended up having to rewrite an offer, which I didn't think we needed to, but we ended up doing it because we wanted the house. We worked it
Gotta
through.
do what you gotta do
Yeah,
sometimes.
we didn't get the house anyway, but whatever.
Well, and also too, if you're listing a property that you know is going to be getting FHA or VA offers on it, you know that that's going to come up, and you're better off, you know, not risking a transaction period. And even if it doesn't say in the listing contract, seller to pay for Section 1 termite repair clearance items, if it's an FHA or a VA, you know you're going to get this. You know, I mean, yeah, granted, they're like, oh, you can negotiate on VA. Well, you know, people are scared to take VA loans in the first place. You don't want to be making it any more treacherous for somebody than it already is, because that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast. But, you know, you should know what you have going into it. You know, I would say the bulk of the times the seller pays. One thing, though, that I'm thinking of, and I've been thinking of doing this more for the past few years, but I'm concerned on what it's going to do to me for the seller acceptance of the offer, is that the buyer pick out the termite inspection company. Because then the buyer is the person who has to live with the results, not the seller, kind of like the home warranty. If I'm the seller, I'm not going to dictate the home warranty, because then if I do, and it's a crappy home warranty company, and the buyer's all mad, they didn't pick it, let them pick it. Then if they're unhappy, that's their problem, because they picked that company because of course you gave them a choice. And the same with termite. They're the ones who are going to have to live with the results of the termite inspection and the work, because when you think about it, the whole process for a termite inspection and repairs and clearance is an extremely incestuous situation. I do not know why. We will not let a home inspector do repairs on a home that they inspected because of the perceived conflict of interest. However, it's perfectly fine to have a termite company come out, walk a property, say A, B, and C need to be done. Maybe they forgot about X, Y, and Z, or maybe it was really only A and B. But then now they get to go and they get to fix it all. You know, they're doing the wood repair, you know, they're subcontracting with the tinting company and everything. Then they come out and say, look it, we did our work. Something's kind of freaky wrong.
Good question. Yeah, really good question.
I think that's something that's inherently wrong. And I've thought this for years. That's why I think a buyer, you know, and I don't know, maybe when the market's a little slower, I can maybe try and experiment and see how well this works.
Probably not a good time right now.
No. But right now it's just like, no, seller's choice. But one thing I do on the condos though, and this is something I don't know if people out there do it, if it's just me or if it's common practice. If you have a property that's in a condominium complex with an HOA, most likely there is a contracted company with the HOA that does all of their termite or wood destroying organisms inspections, and they're handling all of the exterior, maybe the attic, maybe not the attic, you don't know, it all is in the CC&Rs. And then they're going to come and they're going to look under the sinks and look for any water damage or any whatever, I guess, that they're looking for. Now, if I call up my favorite pest guy and say, hey, go out there and inspect, well, he can inspect and he has to say everything that he sees, but the seller's not responsible for all the stuff on the outside or this HOA responsibility. They're only responsible for what is the seller's responsibility that's usually taking place within the airspace of the walls. So what do you do on that? Because now you got a termite report with a bunch of stuff that is not going to be fixed in your 30-day time period because it's an HOA thing. So you got to submit it to the HOA, and the HOA is like, we're not bringing anybody out here to fix that stuff. We have a normal maintenance cycle, and this isn't it. So now you don't get a clearance because you use a termite company that's not part of the HOA. The HOA guy is only going to be looking for what the seller's responsible for, and anything else that shows up is now on record to the HOA that they can issue a work order for, or at least they have it on file that they've got a rot problem outside of unit 115 at the rafters, you know, above the front door. So if you're not doing that, you may want to write that into your contract. I always do when I'm representing somebody for purchasing a condominium. that the seller is to use the HOA contracted termite company for the inspection, and they are only responsible for the seller's items.
That's really good advice. I have sold several condos and have not had an issue, but I never thought it through to that degree of the fact that they're not truly getting a clearance. We always got a letter that says the HOA will take care of it later, and that's the best you could do. So that's good advice to write it in that way.
Well, my termite guy got mad at me for sending him out. He's like, I can't do anything. Why do you keep sending me out? Why don't you just call them up? Oh, okay, that makes perfectly good sense.
Well, and that's why, you know, we have specific partners that we rely on, because not only do they do a good job and they make sure that they're looking out for our clients, but they also educate us too.
Yeah, exactly. And we learn over the years, you know, the running joke.
We don't know their business.
Yeah, you know, well, you know, the running joke is between me and my termite inspector is he's going to get me what I call the pokey stick, you know, the stick with the little metal thing on it, you know, because he says I could probably do a wood inspection as good as he can because of all the times I've been there watching him and seeing and this and that and the other thing. So, you know, it's good for you to know, because then you can also note it on an AVID that you're seeing something, whether it's your listing or another, you know, you're representing the buyer. I have had in the past where a termite report didn't call out wood rot around a window frame and water stains in the garage. And, you know, we went out and had a reinspection done, and it turned out there was like $850 worth of rot damage that the first company didn't pick up. Why they didn't, I don't know, but I knew what to look for. And I looked at the report and said, this isn't there and this isn't there. Why did they give them a clear report when I can stick my finger through a piece of wood? And, you know, so don't always assume. Kind of goes back to that lawyer thing that we talked about. Just because an inspector came out there doesn't mean he caught everything. You know, and if you see something, you have an obligation to say, we have a problem over here. And we were able to have another inspection and get everything taken care of. The seller was then aware of it, and we did our investigations and closed escrow and been happily ever after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. What else?
What else? What else? We're not going to worry about that. And we're not going to worry about that. Let's go to lovely page 10 of 10. Actually, let's go to page 9. And we're going to go down there to expiration of offer, because this is an interesting one. And I want your opinion on this, because this happens a lot right now, especially in a hot market. Some MLS listings will state in there that the seller will be looking at offers on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Others don't say a peep about that. So let's say you're one of the first ones in, you have your expiration of offer, and let's say, just for giggles, I'm going to leave out the other word. You say, today's the 27th. I want an answer by, this offer expires by 2 p.m. on the 29th. And 2 p.m. on the 29th comes and goes. Now what? I haven't heard back from the listing agent. How long does this go on?
Yeah, that's a real tricky one, because, you know, you have this expiration for a reason, yet it's always neglected. I mean, technically, if the buyer wanted to argue, hey, it expired, therefore it's no longer valid, the buyer could argue that. But most of the time, the buyer doesn't want to do that. The buyer wants to keep on until they get a response. So I've yet to see a listing agent say, well, I don't need to respond now because your offer is expired. They usually are communicating with you, letting you know. So I don't have a specific answer for that, but I think it's one of those arbitrary moments where it's just like, well, if we can agree to continue it, we will. I mean, certainly there's an extension of time form we could send over, you know, but there's probably ways to document that we're still playing, but most of the time they know, because we've reached out to them and said, hey, we're still waiting on an answer. And it's, I think it's reasonable for them to say, hey, we've gotten so much interest in this property and some offers coming in that we're going to be making a decision by whatever date, and they let you know. And so I think that kind of goes back to setting the expectation. If as the listing agent, we're going to be, we're going live on Friday, we're going to get a ton of interest over the weekend and probably a lot of offers. We're not going to look at anything probably until Monday or Tuesday. You should really try to say that. I mean, if you and the seller have made that decision that we'll just wait and see what happens over the weekend and we'll regroup on Monday night, that really should be a common courtesy to put in the MLS. And that way the buyer's agents can tell their buyers, look, we may be one of the first offers in, but we're still not getting a response until Monday night. And that way the buyer can sleep all weekend, you can sleep all weekend, because the requirement of presenting offers is simple. It's as soon as possible. Well, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
I mean, with technology today, it's possible I let you know via text message right now, because you have to also tell about a verbal offer, an oral offer. Well, I don't have details on an oral offer. I know Lori's putting in an offer for her buyer and they're offering X amount and they want a 30-day escrow. That's all I know because I haven't seen it in writing. You still have to tell about that offer too. So how do we now define as soon as possible? There is no guideline. So I think if you do have an idea, then you should be forthcoming and let the buyer's agents know. This is when we're going to be doing this.
Well, and here's a question too. So you have the offers and they're coming in. You got the first one coming in and then you got the next one coming in. Do you have to wait to pile them all up and respond at one time, or can you start doling out counter offers while these other ones are coming in? Because then you're not looking like, is it more work? Yeah, it's more work, but you're not looking like you're stockpiling and playing everything against each other, because I think that that's one thing in this business that's really quite sad is used to be back in a not real hot market, one of the first things I remember being told when I was a wee young lad starting out in real estate was your first offer is always your best offer. Well, in a hot market, not so much. But when things start to cool down, there's a lot of truth in that. So you have people that are like, I'm going to be the first offer in, and I'm going to be this great offer. Wouldn't it behoove you to take the person, well, not take their offer, but to at least get them a counter offer while you're still allowing these other offers to come in? So at least you're showing good faith that you're responding to them in the event you did not put it into the multiple listings saying we will be entertaining offers as of whatever time.
Yeah, I mean, I think in theory that's the right approach. When we switched from counter offer to multiple counter offer, that made it a little trickier because that very first offer, you would be submitting a counter offer, and then immediately you'd be submitting a seller multiple counter offer to offer number 2, which means you got to go back to offer number 1 and let them know.
Then did, and now make it a multiple counter offer.
Yeah. So that makes it a little trickier, but all it says is as soon as possible. So I think it becomes a matter of practice. What is the common method of doing business? And I was pulling up my CAR presentation of offers Q&A so I could read the actual verbiage, but it's pretty much as soon as possible is all it says anyway. I'm trying to find the right question number. But I know in other areas, they have a different standard of practice and it can vary from county to county. And so you just kind of have to know like what's considered the norm. And, I think that when you call that agent to ask them, what do you need to see in an offer? It's also what's your plan for presentation of offers?
And at least then you can set that expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and also too, excuse me, let's talk about the presentation of an offer. How do we know? I think we have like this little box right here on page 10 that says presentation of offer, broker or designee's initials, seller's broker presented this offer to seller on date. Are we all doing that out there?
No. Well, it's not required. However, it is a good practice. And I think, as a broker, I I would much rather see my agents on all their listings having that initialed so that we have proof. We don't have to go back and recreate by pulling through our calendar. When did you meet with the seller? When did you tell them about this offer? It's just as you're presenting them, you mark the presentation box. And then when you've made all your decisions, you can mark the rejection box. So, you know, it's not required by law. And the seller is actually not even obligated to initial it because they're not bound by the code of ethics and the requirement, which, by the way, the requirement is that if asked, the listing agent needs to present that, yes, they have presented it through that initial, but it's not required. And so I don't generally see that many. I can't say that I've specifically been looking for that, but you know, as you're scrolling through the pages when you're file checking, you know, you catch things. So I don't think it's a common practice, but I think it's a really good practice when you're the listing agent to always do it, and when you're the buyer's agent to always ask for it to be done.
Good, because I really think in a market like this, you need to cover yourself any way that you possibly can, and to have, you know, and believe me, I have buyers that I'm dealing with, and like, how do I know? How do I know? And it's like, I'm gonna make sure. Don't worry, you know. But it's tough when it's optional. You know, I kind of wish it was mandatory myself. I think that would probably be the best way to know that we're doing what it is we need to do to protect ourselves and our clients, because technically you're protecting that seller as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the same for now, you have proof to your buyer that you are doing the job that you said you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, and that changed. So I'll cover this for the audience. You know, the question is there a legal or ethical requirement that the listing agent initial the presentation of Offerbox? So based on a legal requirement, no. Even though the purchase contract contains a space for it to be initialed by the listing agent, there's no legal requirement that the agent initial it. Doing so is merely a courtesy for the buyer and buyer's agent. And then the ethical requirement. So up through December 31st, 2018, there was no ethical requirement. But as of January 1, 2019, so just a year and a half ago, the Code of Ethics were amended, specifically Standard of Practice 1-7, amended to state that a listing broker or agent is required to confirm in writing that an offer was submitted to the seller if the cooperating broker who submitted the offer so requests. The listing broker or agent must provide the written affirmation unless the seller has waived the obligation to have the offer presented. So, you know, if the agent is still not required to initial it, but if the buyer's agent asks for it, the seller and the listing agent actually has to provide verification that yes, it was presented. And the best place to do it is on the contract itself.
Yes, because I think that there's something neither Lori or I, God, still can't talk. And how long has this been going on? You know, hold ourselves out as being experts on ethics interpretation. You know, we know what they are and everything like that, but they're, you know, I'm kind of refreshing myself, making sure I'm doing my code of ethics renewal. If you haven't done that, guys, go on NAR and check and see if it's due, because it's due. Was every 2 years, now it's every 3 years. So where do you fall in the cycle? Who knows? You better go online and check it out, because mine says incomplete, and that's something I am on it now. So I am taking the courses as we speak.
Well, and actually, as a broker, though, I can log into my Orange County Realtors login, and I can see that all of my agents are current. So I will double check. That's why I haven't brought it to your attention that you need to do it, because I'm seeing that it's current.
I think it's that crossover on the years thing that could get you a little confused, but I figure, hey, right now it's free. It's free if you don't want to get your continuing education credits. Then I think it's $30 if you do. And actually, I'm only maybe about a third to halfway through it right now, and it's got some really good reminders in it. And one of them is you have a duty to present offers, you know, to your seller in a timely manner. And it's just like, wow, that's in code of ethics. You know, there's quite a few things in there. So, and one other thing I found that was interesting is some things that are in our code of ethics on a national basis are actually state law in California. So we kind of have these overlaps and stuff like that. So it's good to know, it's a good refresher. How, how do I treat people? You want them to treat you like you want them to treat you. You treat them like that. And that's really basic, the golden rule. And that's what our ethics is based on. Maybe we can get a special guest. I'm surprised. One of the people that usually would be on here that I consider as a special guest, I haven't seen her name pop up. But we're going to do a little fishing and see if we can get us an ethics expert and maybe talk about, ethics in a hot market. Today's kind of the RPA in a hot market, but maybe we can talk about ethics in a hot market if that's something that, the group here would like to see. But we're closing in on 11 o'clock. I think we pretty much covered the RPA, but there's two things I have notes on real quick. Number one, and I don't think either of them are here, and I'm really upset about that. We have two nerdy realtor birthdays today. Two of our biggest nerds, too.
Really?
Happy birthday to Roxanne Eason and Harry Solomon. Happy nerdy birthday to you guys. And so that's our birthday shout out. I thought they'd be here to how are they not spending their birthday?
Celebrating. They're celebrating. Why would they want to celebrate with us?
Because they're with their
Why not, right?
And the other thing is just a little quick talk on mortgage forbearance and maybe loans, student loan forbearance. We're seeing this more and more, and I think we're going to see it more and more and more coming up. Again, maybe we're going to talk about this on another one of our Monday morning coffee and compliance or Thursday unplugged, because I haven't done a Thursday unplugged in quite some time. Through practical application, we are finding out that people are going online and applying for loans, maybe to refi, maybe to buy a new home, and they fill out the thing online and they're like, boom, you're pre-approved. Yay, you got direct underwriter approval, and you too can go out and buy yourself that home you always wanted to get. And they're like, hey, look, I got my letter. Let's go shopping. You're like, yeah, they got direct underwriter approval, because that's what all these people put in their listings. That they don't want a pre-approval letter. They want direct underwriter approval. A direct underwriter approval is just about as good as a pre-approval letter, because they haven't done a dive beyond the credit report. Because let's say you go out, you get this client a house, perhaps maybe you've sold their house, and now you're going out to find them a replacement home, and they're walking around with this pre-approval letter, and you're putting out offers. And guess what? As soon as that loan processor dives in there and starts finding out that there is a problem with their payment history, because you can have a problem with your payment history all day long, and it ain't going to show up on that credit report because of the way the forbearance laws are written. So now, what do? Sit in the corner and cry, suck your thumb? You got all kinds of things you could be doing. But as we are here to share information, ask your clients, ask your sellers, ask your buyers, have you taken one of those forbearance offers that have been offered to you for COVID, where maybe that was a COVID related situation at which you'll probably have to write an explanation letter to say why it actually was a COVID related forbearance. Or if you're just doing it because you don't have to pay your mortgage for 3 months, ask them up front. Tell them if they're talking to a lender, if they're talking to a human being, which they should, say, I am in forbearance, or I had a forbearance, because we're hearing, and I think a lot of you saw the comment I put in the thread, who's running across this. And, the lenders, and thank you for responding out there, I so appreciate it, are saying, well, they just need to bring it current and they're good. We're talking 3 months of missed mortgage payments. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. Most likely these people were not putting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into their savings account for them to pull themselves out of forbearance. If they had a COVID situation, they probably don't have that money. And if they didn't, well, they still don't have that money.
They probably paid off their credit cards or something else.
Exactly.
And they used that money.
Yeah. So it's really, really super important for us to be having these conversations If you have a buyer that comes to you with a pre-approval letter from a lender that you didn't, recommend to them, or you don't know, ask your client, was there a forbearance? Call that lender and ask out their lender, did you know that there's a forbearance? Because I can guarantee you the loan officer probably didn't ask, which now should become a new standard that the loan officers are asking. And if they did it online, I highly doubt there's a box there saying, are you currently in forbearance?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in the practice that we are going to carry forward with us. We don't know how long we'll use those PED forms, but that needs to be part of our conversation with our buyers, because it's not something we're accustomed to doing, but it's something we need to before we go down a path that ends up, they can't move forward on something, and now they're disappointed, and now they just want to halt the brakes. They may be able to remedy it, but maybe not in the way they had hoped. So we need to save ourselves and our clients that heartache by asking them those questions. And, she mentioned about the student loans. My daughter has a student loan that I pay, and we got an email that says your administrative forbearance, and, reminder that the government automatically put student loans on forbearance, not all, certain ones, but we kept making the payment because, we had to log into bill pay and just forgot, and then got the email, your payment's been posted. Oh shoot, we got to change that, forgot. So fine, we've made 4 months of payments, and, the loan's going down. But I don't know if an administrative forbearance is any different than these other kind of forbearance. Don't know yet.
Exactly.
I make the payments, I don't have to worry about it. I didn't have any no payments, but others may. Others might have taken advantage of that administrative forbearance, and then who knows if that's going to impact them. I think we just don't know yet.
And also, too, we're at the end of the 3 months right now. We've got the unemployment's running out. We don't, I haven't turned on the news in 24 hours, giving myself a sanity break. So I don't know if there's been any movement at all with the bill in the Senate. I'm sure we're going to see something come out this week. But we all need to remember, they're just churning stuff out. They don't know about the ramifications of a lot of this stuff. And since we're at that 3 months, a lot of these forbearance agreements that were done back in March and April are up. And one of my clients received an automatic extension on her mortgage forbearance. Well, the lender didn't know she paid the loan off, but she got a letter stating, hey, guess what? You got another 3 months. Now imagine 6 months of missed house payments. Don't go try to buy a car. Don't try to refinance. Don't try to do anything, because they're not telling people that this can affect them. And we did have a town hall, Realtor town hall meeting with Congresswoman Katie Porter. And if you guys see any of these congressional Realtor town halls, I highly recommend getting, registering and attending, because you're going to learn some information about what they're going through, what they're seeing, but it's also your opportunity to bring to them what it is you're seeing. And we brought up to Representative Porter that there is a negative ramification because of the payment history, and she had no idea. And we're going to be getting her some examples, and she said she's going to take this to financial services so they can talk about it, because again, nobody realized what the unintended consequences were going to be. So don't be afraid to be that person making that noise. We all assume somebody else is going to do it, or somebody else has done it. You'd be shocked how much stuff doesn't get done because everybody just assumes somebody else took care of it.
Right. Well, we had a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? We won't even ask if there was anything from the Friday meeting.
Yeah, there was good discussion, but nothing really new. So.
Okay, good. Well, it's 11:03. I say we wrap this baby up and get on with our days, but we hope that you guys found out something useful today. Maybe it was just some little basic tidbit, or you're like, wow, I didn't know about that. And if you guys have anything you want to talk about, you know how to find us. Just, shoot us a message, post it on the group, anything you're seeing out there, because what we want to know is, what are you seeing? There's life beyond Lisa, as much as people probably think I don't know that. there's
So
other
we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people in the last couple of months about their experiences. And so it's, this gives us the opportunity to share experiences, learn from each other. And definitely, we want everyone in the group to bring things forward that we all need to know about, because we all can get better. We all learn and we all can improve. So.
Exactly. Throw it on the wall in the group. Start a conversation. We can do some good work based on just communicating and sharing information, sharing ideas, asking for help. We're here for you and you're here for us. So let us know, and cheers to a good week.
Let's hope so.
Please.
It'll be a great week. Awesome.
Okay,
Bye, everybody.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.